You have been carrying something for a very long time. Not one thing, many things. A weight built slowly over decades, layer by layer, the way sediment builds at the bottom of a river, so gradually that at no point did you feel the full weight arrive. At no point did someone hand you everything at once and say, "Here, carry this." It came in pieces, a responsibility added here, a grief absorbed there, a version of yourself set aside because the moment required something else, a need left unspoken because there was no room for it, a door closed quietly because walking through it would have cost too much at the time, and because each piece arrived separately, and because you are the kind of person who carries things without complaint, you adjusted to each one. Your body adjusted, your mind adjusted, your sense of what was normal adjusted, until the weight became invisible, not because it was gone, but because it had become so constant, so much a part of the landscape of your daily existence, that you stopped feeling it as weight at all. You started feeling it as yourself. That is the most important thing I'm going to say today, and I want you to hear it fully before we go any further. At some point, the weight stopped feeling like something you were carrying and started feeling like something you were. The grief, the unfinished business, the years of putting yourself last, the accumulated silences, the things you never said and the things you said that you cannot take back, the people you lost and the versions of yourself you lost alongside them. All of it stopped being burden and became, in some quiet and terrible way, identity. And because it became identity, you stopped questioning it. You stopped asking whether it needed to be there. You stopped wondering what you might feel like without it. Because who are you without the weight? The question itself feels dangerous, like if you put it down, something essential about you goes with it. I want to tell you something about that fear. It is one of the most understandable fears a person can have, and it is also one of the most costly, because the weight is not you. It was never you. It is what happened to you, what you chose for others, what life demanded, and what you gave. It is the record of a person who showed up fully and paid the full price of a life genuinely lived. But a record is not the same as a person. The map is not the territory. What you carried is not what you are. And right now, today, in this moment, that weight is still on you. Not because you chose to keep it, but because no one ever told you that you could put it down. No one ever sat with you in the specific gravity of your particular life and said, "You're allowed to set this down now." Not because it did not matter, because it did matter. Because you carried it faithfully and well, and the carrying is done and you are still here and you do not have to keep holding what no longer needs to be held. I want you to think about what the weight actually consists of, not in the abstract. Specifically, the things that sit on your chest in the quiet hours. The regrets that surface when the distraction stops. The relationships that ended in ways that never fully resolved. The dreams that were real once and then became embarrassing to mention, and then became something you tried not to think about at all. The person you were before life needed so much from you, and the distance between that person and the one you see in the mirror now. All of that has weight. Real weight. The kind that does not show up in any scan or measurement, but that the body knows intimately. The kind that makes mornings harder than they should be. The kind that turns silence into something uncomfortable rather than something restful. The kind that sits in the space between who you are and who you might have been and quietly, continuously, makes that space feel like accusation. You have been breathing around that weight for so long that you forgot what it felt like to breathe without it. Here is what I know about people who have carried as much as you have carried. I know that the caring changes you, but not only in the ways you fear. Yes, it costs you. Yes, it takes things from you that cannot be fully recovered, but it also deposits something that cannot be manufactured and cannot be rushed, and cannot be given to someone who has not paid the price of real living. It deposits depth. It deposits a particular kind of knowledge that only comes from having been through things. It deposits a capacity for understanding that the young, for all their energy and possibility, simply do not yet possess. It deposits the ability to sit in the presence of another person's pain without flinching, because you have sat in your own pain and you did not break. That is not nothing. That is extraordinary. That is a kind of wealth that the world chronically undervalues because the world is infatuated with what is new. But here is the thing about that depth, that knowledge, that hard-won capacity. It cannot do anything for you while it is buried under the weight. It cannot breathe under there. It cannot move. It cannot be offered to yourself or to anyone else as long as the accumulated years of grief and sacrifice and unfinished business are pressing down on top of it. The weight is not protecting you. I know it can feel that way. Weight can feel like ballast, like the thing keeping you stable, keeping you from floating away into something uncertain and undefined. But that stability is not the good kind. That is the stability of something that cannot move, not the stability of something that is rooted. You are not rooted, you are pinned, and there is a difference that changes everything. Putting down the weight is not the same as forgetting what you carried. It is not the same as pretending the years were other than they were. It is not erasure or denial or the performance of a lightness you do not feel. It is something far more honest than any of that. It is the decision to stop letting the past be heavier than the present, to stop allowing what was to crowd out what is, to stop measuring yourself against a life that cannot be relived and start inhabiting, fully and without apology, the one that is actually in front of you. The weight has had you long enough. It has shaped you, and some of what it shaped is worth keeping, and some of it is ready to be released, and only you know which is which. But the release is possible. The lightness is not a fantasy for other kinds of people living other kinds of lives. It is available here, in this life, in this body, at this age, with this history. You have carried everything you needed to carry. You are allowed to put it down now, not because you are giving up, because you have already won, because the person who survived all of that carrying deserves to spend whatever years remain finding out what they feel like without it. That person is you. Put it down. Breathe. You have not taken a full breath in longer than you realize, but the capacity for it is still there, waiting, patient, entirely yours. Take it. I want to tell you about something that happens to the body when it has been under sustained weight for a long time, not metaphorical weight. The actual physiological reality of what chronic burden does to a human being. The body adapts. It reshapes itself around the load. The muscles that were meant to move freely learn to brace instead. The breath that was meant to go all the way down learns to stay shallow because shallow is enough to survive. And survival has been the operating mode for so long that anything beyond it feels like excess. The jaw tightens. The shoulders rise. The chest closes slightly inward, protective, guarding something that may not even need guarding anymore. The eyes learn to scan for the next difficulty before the current one has finished. The nervous system, which was designed for moments of threat followed by recovery, never quite reaches recovery because the threats became so constant and so varied that the system simply stayed alert. This is what long-term weight does, and most people who have carried what you have carried know this not as description, but as the texture of their daily existence. The tightness that is so familiar, it stopped registering as tightness and became simply the way a body feels. But a body under sustained weight is not a body living, it is a body surviving, and there is an entire dimension of physical and inner experience that becomes available the moment the weight begins to lift. Not the memory of it. Not the pretending it was never there. The actual physiological, emotional, spiritual shift that happens when something that has been pressing down for decades is gently, deliberately, finally allowed to be released. People who experience this describe it in similar ways, not as euphoria, not as sudden lightness or dramatic transformation, more as a slow returning, a recognition, the sense of a self coming back into focus after years of being slightly blurred, the particular satisfaction of a breath that goes all the way down for the first time in longer than you can remember. That experience is not reserved for other people. It is not something that requires a different history or a different body or a different set of circumstances than the ones you actually have. It requires only the willingness to acknowledge that the weight exists, that it has been there, that it has cost you something real, and that you are done, not defeated, not surrendering, but genuinely, consciously done, letting it define the shape of what remains. What remains is not small. Do not make the mistake of thinking that what comes after the weight is diminished somehow, reduced, a lesser version of what was there before. What comes after the weight is what was always underneath it. The thing that survived the carrying, the self that endured every year of it and is still, right now, in this moment, reaching. You have been suffocating in plain sight for long enough. The weight is not the truth of you. It is what you carried to get here. You are here. Put it down.